Hugo, how we doing, mate?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Shauna. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Today we are going to be reviewing Miami Vice, which you said you've not seen, not one
Never,
episode of.
never. I kind of seen an advert for it. And before this call, I was told by my other half, Lou, that this was a regular in her household. So
Yep.
I'm quite intrigued to see what she thinks of our episode and also this episode from Miami Vice in general.
Well, interestingly, from what your other half is saying, in my household, this was also a TV show that was on regularly. I don't remember what night it was on, but it was a popular show, and you haven't had any exposure to this. And I started
None.
watching these recently. So for the uninitiated who haven't watched Miami Vice, or you've seen it and you're checking out this review just to sort of reminisce a bit, watching this show as a grown up in sort of 2020s eyes, it's for me it's an iconic show. Because so what you'll notice, and I don't think we'll be able to put this across on the review, I'll show it to you, Hugo. The music they used in every episode were top 20, like Phil Collins. I think that clip we showed you was the Tonight scene. And
Yeah.
they filmed these TV shows like a movie, the
Okay.
cinematography, and it was very film oriented, and the acting. Not to put thoughts or kind of prompt you to think a certain way when you're watching it, but just pay attention to the acting, because I feel like the acting was on a different level for shows at that time, and even the writing of the dialogue.
But you watched B.A. Baracus in the, driving the van, didn't you?
Yeah, I think, but see, that's the problem, because that does bias my review a bit, because I've seen that now, and I know what good acting is. And I think when I watched Miami Vice, I wasn't aware of BA acting
There we go.
and driving. So I may be giving you some bogus information, having not taken into account BA Baracus acting like he's driving.
Well, I'm
However,
intrigued. I'm trying not to take in too much of what you say from a biased perspective.
yeah.
I know it's really difficult to do that, but I'm going to really try and go in, as I always try, with an open mind.
So I think, and this may be a good way to look at it, I want you just to pay attention to how this show differs from every show you may have seen in this era and how it compares to shows now. So just to give a bit of a bio. So Miami Vice is an American crime drama television series created by Anthony Yerkovich and executive produced by Michael Mann for NBC. The series stars Don Johnson. You're familiar with Don Johnson?
Heard of him? Yeah.
Okay. Have you seen the film, golf film, Tin Cup?
I
With
think
Kevin
along.
Costner?
Yes, is that when he's got like I can't remember what it's called, like a syndrome, like he's lost his thingy, whatever.
Well,
He
so
lost
is
his
this?
mojo.
So yeah, he did lose his mojo, and Don Johnson plays the professional golfer who is who's on tour and trying to get Tin Cup to coach, just trying to connect Don Johnson to somebody. But Don Johnson, very good actor. Philip Michael Thomas is Rico Tubbs. So they're two cops, and with this show, they are vice cops. They're undercover. They're meant to look like drug dealers. They're meant to look like gangsters, but they're working undercover for the police.
Sorry, can I just ask what is a vice cop? What is that? Just does that mean undercover? Does it?
Well,
You've
that's a
said
good
it, and
question.
you've got Vice Golf on your hat, and it's just like what's
You know what?
Vice? What's
I
that
didn't
mean?
even connect that. I did not connect that. So I actually let me restate this. Knowing we were doing the Vice episode, I wore my Vice hat. So what is a Vice cop? A Vice Squad. So Vice Squad is a police division whose focus is stopping public order crimes like gambling, narcotics, prostitution, and illegal sales of alcohol.
Also, like human vices.
Oh yeah, I didn't even. Again, Hugh, you're
So
bringing way more value to this than I am.
okay, so yeah, like the people with problems with drugs, alcohol, gambling, solicited. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, makes sense.
So Vice, yeah, seeing if there's
They're
any more
after
information.
guys up to no good in Miami.
Which is they're dealing with the drug dealers, the kingpins, I think a lot of the show was very much centered around the drug scene in Miami at the time, which was quite vast.
Yeah.
So it's Crockett and Tubbs, so two Metro-Dade Police Department detectives working undercover in Miami. The series ran for 5 seasons on NBC from September 16th, 1984 to January 25th, 1990. The USA Network began airing reruns in 1988. Unlike standard police procedurals, the TV show drew heavily upon 1980s new wave culture and became noted for its integration of music and visual effects, which you very much saw on that clip that we showed you last week.
Trailer. Yeah, true.
Yeah. Which that trailer, I don't watch many trailers for TV shows that kind of get you excited to watch. And that I thought that trailer did very much that. And I knew the show.
No, I agree.
So it has been called one of the top 50 TV shows. People magazine stated that Miami Vice was the first to look really new and different since color TV was invented. So, very smooth transition to the actual synopsis of the show. Here we have scene 1. Crockett and Tubbs are finishing a long shift of surveillance where they are keeping an eye on known drug dealer Felix Castronova. Crockett is preparing for a morning court date in which he is meeting with his wife to finalize the terms of their divorce. In the next scene, we see Caroline, Crockett, and both of their lawyers. Both lawyers having a very lawyer-like exchange, fighting over who gets what. Whilst listening to this exchange, Crockett and his ex-wife Caroline step aside and make a determination they're going to give it a go. The scene next cuts back to Felix Castronova. As he's leaving his hotel, he is met by an assassin who shoots him dead and then quickly escapes the police in a waiting Camaro. The police end up tracing this Camaro back to a hotel. Upon arriving to the scene, Tubbs finds the police there in full force, making their presence very obvious. Worried that the perpetrators are fleeing out the back, Tubbs gives chase, however is unsuccessful. Upon searching the vacated hotel room, the police find $20,000 in cash, 2 pistols, and a memo book containing a hit list. We then jump to Crockett and Caroline in bed, celebrating what is their decision to not get a divorce, where they're interrupted by Tubbs and Rodriguez knocking at the door, who then inform Crockett that the hit list they found had 8 names on it, 6 of which have already been murdered. One of the 2 names left on the list is Crockett. The police, after investigating the Camaro a little bit further, do find fingerprints, which are linked to a assassin with no photograph on file and no name, somehow. They do, however, in the hotel room find paperwork linking back to a gentleman by the name of Carlos Mendez, a mid-level dealer for Calderone. Calderone being a notorious nemesis of Crockett and Tubbs from a previous episode. Rodriguez then orders Crockett, who is protesting, to join his wife at a safe house. Crockett wants to stay on the case, however, Rodriguez insists and escorts him back to his house to pick up his personal effects before joining his wife. Unaware the assassin already has Crockett's address and is lying in wait at a neighboring tower with a sniper rifle, Rodriguez gets shot diving in front of a bullet to protect Crockett. Rodriguez isn't killed, but he's in a bad way. Crockett, not wanting to risk his family's safety with his presence, and Tubbs being incapable of convincing Crockett to stay in hiding, the pair decide to track down the final person on the hit list, who's a gentleman by the name of Linus, a Miami area nightclub owner. Linus has connections with Mendez, who they believe is the assassin, and they use Linus to try to trap Mendez. The pair successfully pressure Linus into arranging a meeting with Mendez, where they need Linus to identify Mendez, as they don't know what he looks like. At the nightclub, Linus does successfully point out who Mendez is, where the police roll in, arrest Mendez, and take him in for questioning. Crockett, believing his life is no longer in danger and they've caught the assassin, heads home with his wife and kid. Meanwhile, Tubbs is at the police station questioning Mendez, trying to find the location of Calderone, who they believe is the mastermind behind this assassination attempt. Whilst questioning Mendez, a call comes through from Homicide, confirming that Linus has been murdered, even though they have Mendez in custody. Tubbs immediately realizes the assassin must still be on the loose, and Crockett's life is still in danger. He immediately gets in the car and races to Crockett's house. The next few scenes we see swapping back and forth between Tubbs racing to Crockett and Crockett walking in the door of his house, where an assassin is waiting for him. We next see Crockett, his wife and kid, entering the house. And upon entering the house, Crockett sees a half-eaten donut and cup of coffee on the floor. His intuition tells him something isn't right, and he immediately grabs his wife and kid and ducks for cover. Crockett and his family are now pinned down by gunfire, but hear the voice of Tubbs outside, who is now in a position to offer support. The assassin eventually does run out of bullets and has to reload. Realizing that he's now cornered by Crockett and Tubbs, decides to make a run for it, jumping over Crockett's wife and child and out the window. Once out the window, he's cornered by the Miami-Dade police. And instead of going quietly, the assassin decides he's going to go out in a blaze of bullets, knowing full well that he is in a no-win situation. With the assassin now dead, the episode closes out with a close-up on Crockett, reflecting on the events that have just happened, knowing that even though the assassin is dead, Crockett and Tubbs are still not safe, and there is still work to be done in hunting down Calderone. Man, there you go.
Ooh,
So
juicy.
I'm glad they kind of wrapped up some of that stuff, because I was just
Yeah,
dying
me
to
too.
see what was happening. And it actually did act as a standalone episode on its own.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, that was, having seen a few, that was a very, very good episode. And to me, it started slow, and I wasn't sure if we picked the right one, but that was very good.
Does it correlate? I know it's different because there's two parts, but would you say that was like a standard episode, what you'd normally get with action, humor, all that type of stuff? Or
Yeah. So where I see this one differing from other episodes I've seen, the plot is much better in this one, and I think this is probably why IMDb rated this much higher. I think when you look at the other episodes, so what we didn't see too much is I would have liked this episode to showcase more of Don Johnson as an actor, because even in the small scenes you see, I don't think you really appreciate how good an actor he is in this time frame, in this procedural drama. You see it more in his partner, in Crockett's character. But this to me is a very good example of a Miami Vice episode. The action scene at the end, I thought was not just like a Beverly Hills Cop, ducking and rolling, shooting at each other. I thought that was a well choreographed action scene at the end.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like harsher on those scenes, but like I have to use the frame of reference. It's in the 80s, and if you were going to compare it to any other, then it was better than most 80s TV shows that you're going to see.
If I look at that, even then, I don't even think that that's relative, because I know what you're talking about with 80s. I think there's a good example of that when we take a look earlier in the show, when Crockett. No, sorry, it's Tubbs. Crockett is Don Johnson. When Tubbs is chasing Mendez, who I think was shot at the end. Was it Mendez he was chasing? They were going after somebody.
Yeah,
through the hotel.
The shotgun.
And he had a sawed-off shotgun. And for me, that was definably an 80s sort of scene that I struggle with, because he's standing in the middle of a very busy street with a shotgun, brandishing it everywhere. And people are just sort of like so desensitized to guns at this time. They're just like walking around him. Whereas with this last scene, I had a lot of buy-in to this scene. So he walks in, he sees the donut and coffee tipped over, knows something's not right away, and self-preservation. He ducks with the kids, has his gun on him. He's a cop, and his partner was on his way because he figured out what was going on. And that choreographed scene, to me, I didn't find that implausible. This was a hitman with a gun with a lot of bullets, and I thought that scene played out quite acceptably.
Let me explain this. Let me clarify some more what I didn't like about it. Was the donut and the coffee marker on the floor. So he's kind of this seemingly clever assassin that's knocking off people left, right, and center, and people now know about him. Word on the street, he even knows, because he's tailing Crockett, that Crockett is kind of wary of him. Like in the street, he kind of pulled a gun on someone. He was right there and saw that, and he said, "I'm a little on edge at the moment." So he heard that, so he knows that he's aware, and he's done all this great kind of work up until this point of trying to like knock these people off. And what he does is leave something right in the middle of his house when he comes in. It's just,
that's a good point.
From a realism standpoint, it's real lazy. It's not just lazy, it's stupid. Like, so that's a little bit 80s, to be honest. That was a little bit kind of like, that's a little bit corny. Like, because he saw that, oh God, he's here. rather than something else. I know that's his marker that we saw near the start, didn't we? We saw him with the donut, and then the glasses were there.
Yeah.
So that's, and the coffee cup. So that's his thing for the audience. But just as the assassin realism thing, I was a bit like, but no, I think you're right. After that point, when the shots were fired, the exchange was more realistic. I agree.
Yeah, and that's actually, I didn't even think about that. What I was focused on with the donut and coffee was, I thought from a cinematography standpoint, and I'm not saying this is, Francis Ford Coppola or anything like that. However, I looked at the donut and coffee and thought that was quite a clever tie-in to what was seemingly an important, it was an important nonsense scene, focusing in on the coffee and donut at the end and then tying it together at the end. That was where my thought was. But yeah, that is a good point. That bothers me now that you mentioned that.
Here's artistic cue. What I would have done is had the donut and coffee somewhere where Crockett couldn't see, but we could see. So like some kind of inverse angle where you see Crockett coming through the door, and round the corner you see the coffee and the donut mug out of his view, like, oh, he's there. And we've got the tension, but again, I'm being real picky here. If I'm gonna get down that standard and rewatch the A-Team and fucking Tropic Thunder, like, we're gonna just rip this all apart. But I suppose because it is of a higher standard, and like I'm probably trying to kind of keep it to that. And it was, on the whole, I thought it was a really exciting, interesting episode. I'm like, I'd be compelled to kind of watch part 2.
Yeah, I when I look at that, I think you're very correct. We do need to hold this to a slightly higher standard because it's asking to be held to a higher standard by the production value. And there was a lot of effort that goes into that. And I think when I look at the things that bother me throughout the show, and there are things that bother me throughout the show. So Linus, his character was so very 80s and so poorly acted. So
which one team, mate?
That was the big sort of Yeah, so he displayed the poor 80s telephone acting that drives me bananas. It's like, hey, what you want, man? I'm fine. Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And it's like he didn't give enough of a gap for the guy to say, could you meet me at the bar? I'll be there. It's busy. He's like, what do you want me? I'll be there in 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, cut. Why doesn't the director step in and say, cut? All right, you need to let him talk. And then you respond just like a normal phone conversation. But that doesn't happen for some reason in the 80s. And those are things I don't understand why they can't address that on every phone conversation that ever happens.
I agree with you. I think he was there to like lighten up as well, wasn't he? He was like the light relief of like a tense episode. But I think, again, if you're going to be critical, you can improve bits like that, can't you? You can still have light relief and be more realistic.
Yeah, I think when we look at a lot of other episodes, so as an example, Penn and Gillette. So Penn Teller is a guest star in one, and he acts as that light relief.
Oh, right.
And I think you get a bit more latitude with those external characters coming in. Penn being a comedic magic actor at the time. So he could be a bit goofy and not a great actor. Whilst we were watching the show, I was looking up Linus's background, and he's nobody that I would know of, or nobody at the time that would be of note. So he's just a character actor that was brought in. So for me, his character bothered me a bit. And actually, the way the storyline played out, I thought when they were chasing him, they were chasing the who they thought was the
That's
hitman.
what I thought. Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was done for effect. That bothered me a little bit in the episode again, but I'm nitpicking. Anything else you noted in any of those scenes?
From a nitpicky point of view, no, I didn't like the fighting in the club. No, I mean, I gotta say, like, largely just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride.
What I pay attention to, and what stands out for me, when we look at the last scene, and it's just the subtlety of when I watched the Don Johnson and Philip. I'm gonna just confirm his name because I struggle to remember his name. It is what's his name? Philip something. Philip Michael Thomas. So Philip Michael Thomas is Tubbs. So Philip Michael Thomas and Don Johnson. I'm always intrigued to watch bad acting in dated TV shows, and you really notice things about bad actors or actors at that time and how over the top they are. And when you look at scenes where Don Johnson, just small exchanges where Philip Michael Thomas and Don Johnson are acting reflective, or their, you know, their faces, they're not overacting. And that's something that to me stood out, you know, watching Miami Vice, is how good they are at acting just basic scenes. You are totally buying into their characters. Now, when you see their colleagues who are on the stakeouts with them, not so much the female actors, but the male actors, you know, the Laurel and Hardy pairing, you know, they kind of ham it up a bit. And I think it's the subtlety in the acting is so advanced in this show to me. When I watch it, I don't know if you saw it the same way.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't like, not to the extent where I would have mentioned it now, but as you're mentioning it, you're spot on, because there is a different caliber to their acting for sure. They stand out in comparison to the rest of them.
So I'm going to go back to this scene because this is where I notice it, and it's Don Johnson's acting in here, and it's just, think about this and think about every 80s or 90s actor or poor film. Like, think about Walker, Texas Ranger. And think about if you've ever seen a show of that, or think of a show that you know is definable. Think of any Jean-Claude Van Damme film and think about his acting and Don Johnson's acting here. Just this little exchange.
Yeah, I like this. I can remember it. Yeah.
Is she gonna be all right?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
So for me, there's a lot of subtlety in that, and that's something I would struggle to pull off as an actor, and I think a lot of actors do. It's that, you know, he's stuck in thought. He's not doing it in a cheesy way, like, let's say, Van Damme acting like he's thinking about something. He's pondering. She checks if he's okay. So his acting then, and I'm not a schooled actor or somebody who studied acting, but as sort of a layperson, he then snaps out of it and realizes she's checking on him. I need to let her know that I'm okay so she can move along and I can kind of get back. And it's those subtleties when you see his face, his demeanor. To me, that's definably another level actor. This is somebody who is a proper professional. And in this day and age, that's what was eye-opening to me when I saw this again. It's this type of acting that, to me, doesn't distract from the show. It actually engrosses me into the show.
Yeah, I agree. We basically saw him acting, didn't we? We saw the actor acting because his initial response was kind of just, he was in his own head thinking about this guy that they're now going for. And like you said, he was kind of like quite dismissive of her at the moment because he couldn't get out of his head. Then, exactly as you said, was aware that was happening, just broke that a minute and just to try and pass her on, and then acted, and then just went straight back to it again. So we saw the actor act, and it was very convincing.
Yeah. So with the show, the things that I do like about it, and that was the first thing, I like the you know, the cars and the culture. So one thing I find any show that really draws you in, it makes you want to be in that place they're at. You know, it's in Miami. So even the opening scenes, you see the flamingos and you know, a lot of scenes in the water, and it's very much within the city of Miami. So even, you know, on Biscayne, that's one of the main roads that everyone knows about in Miami. And the clothes and you know, the nightlife at the time, it really transports you to that place. So when I think of shows I like watching, a lot of times it's I want to be in that situation. I think a lot of shows today are very much built on that. Friends is a good example of that. You know, I know it's a comedy, but Friends, and just speaking to people who are here, there's so many people watching Friends growing up. You wanted to be that group of people living in New York City in that flat and having, you know, your mates across the way and having the social group. So you watch that because you identify with that. And I think seeing them walking around Miami in their wicker shoes and their, you know, linen clothes, because it is warm, so they have to look cool and they get to wear those things, where if I lived in New York City, I couldn't wear wicker shoes and a linen top. That would be ridiculous. But they have a reason to wear that stuff, so it looks quite cool. The TV show Death in Paradise, if you've ever seen that, it's a British murder mystery TV show.
I would never ever watch it in my life, but I know Lou's watched a couple of those.
It's actually quite good. But looking at that, I like watching it because it takes me to this tropical island and I get to see, you know, there's murder going on. But what adds depth to that is it transports me to a place that I would actually rather like to be. And I think Miami Vice does a very good job of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, I don't think that's a point that I would have brought up myself, but now you mention it, I think I can look back at all my favorite TV shows and think very much the same thing. really, really simply, you could put it down to things like Top Gear as well, which again, I'm not like a,
Yeah.
I used to love it back in the day, and then it got pretty scripted and pretty old. But what do people love about it? They're compelled by these characters, these friends hanging out together, however irritating you find them. It's kind of compelling to see three friends having fun in these unbelievable cars or silly cars in these extraordinary locations doing silly things. And you just like, like that would be so cool to do that. I wish me and my friends could do that. It kind of transports you there. So I felt that watching it in Miami, especially actually in the first few scenes, just with the courthouse and then walking. I saw that I think was it a police horse, and it had the palm trees in the back. I kind of picked up on that. Oh, yeah, look at the palm trees in the middle of the city. And when they were with the son, and he said goodbye to the son and his wife, and that little kind of, I don't know where that was, but you got the sea in the background. It looked beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely something. It sells it well.
Yeah, it showcases the city. It showcases Miami, and that is a big part of that show. Because if this was happening in Detroit, that I don't know this. I think that really does aid to the show, and the music in the background, and all of the wardrobe choices of all the actors. There's people wearing flowery shirts in the police station, and you can buy that because of where they are, and that is the culture. That's what people were wearing in Miami at the time. So it's very much transforms you or transplants you. It's like I'm terrible at this. It what's the word? It not transforms, not transplants. It takes you to that place. I'll get a thesaurus.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. And then I think the last thing I want to raise is, and this is what I think I look for, or when you look at these types of shows, these procedural dramas, and it kind of goes back to the acting, but it's the characters, the main characters in the show, and that's Crockett and Tubbs. They are, I think, very cool, but I don't think they're too cliche about it. I mean, they are definitely 80s and cliche, but I think their characters are very very relative to a certain degree. I don't find, maybe it's the lack of overacting, but I find myself thinking they're quite cool, very A-team oriented. I'm rooting for them. So they're very likable characters. They're very interesting, but they have that cool factor. I mean, Don Johnson, I think at the time, I'd liken him to Brad Pitt today, where Brad Pitt can throw anything on and look cool. And I think Don Johnson could wear what most people would look ridiculous in, wicker shoes and white linen trousers or a white suit. No way I'm pulling that off. I'm sorry. And there's no way you're pulling that off.
I'd give it a go.
You give it a go, but I don't know that you pull it off the same way. But he makes that work. And I think there's some identification that especially when, guys specifically, maybe when you watch shows like that and you see those kind of characters, you like to, I guess, envision yourself in those roles, or you just see that cool factor, and you like to root for the guys who are pretty badass, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I think that we could put this back to A-Team and Tropic Thunder, where as a kid,
Thunder in Paradise. Thunder in
Paradise. Sorry, so Tropic Thunder's a film, isn't it?
Thunder
in Paradise. So when you're a kid watching that, you can kind of have some similar things where you just love the Hulkster so much, and you see he's being a daughter and he's got a kid, and you like wish you were the kid, and having Hulkster as the dad, and you being transported to you wish you were part of his life. And the same as like the A-Team, like being part of that and wanting them to kind of fight the bad guys. There is if I'm going to kind of draw comparisons from it, as a kid watching those, you could relate to them in the same kind of window as I'm relating now to Miami Vice. But I wouldn't have been able to watch Miami Vice and get the same kind of feel to it. I think it would have been a bit scarier as well, because it's a bit too realistic, a bit too nuanced as well. But I think the point that you raise, a lot of programs do that. They will draw you in with in some way. There is this kind of will to be, and maybe the strength of one character alone can do that. Maybe you just wanting to be as cool and as as courageous as the lead man is enough to kind of draw you in. And you've got this important point of like fashion in behind them being really cool, kind of looking, as well as brave, courageous, intelligent to try and outfox the bad guy. And then you've got the environment side of it, somewhere that's very, especially from people as Brits, we look at this that kind of tropical kind of paradise type of city. There's no city like that in the UK. So it's all very appealing.
Well, I think it's time that we give our review, our score for Miami Vice. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one, and I think we need to be careful with how we compare this to Thunder in Paradise and the A-Team. But I think we are comparing shows. So I think each show we take on its own merit, and we judge it on what it's trying to get out of, what it's trying to produce. So Thunder in Paradise was very tongue in cheek. And they were just trying to make a fun show that was a bit Baywatch and a bit 007. And A-Team was very original, unapologetically doing what it was meant to do in the same way every week. And I think Miami Vice, they were trying to create a thrilling, action-packed procedural crime drama. And their goal was to make you feel like you're in Miami, identify with the characters, and just get gripped into the show. And I think it does that if we were to judge it on this episode. I'm not going to judge other episodes that I've seen. I'm thinking with this show, I'm thinking high sevens. Where are you sitting?
Oh, are you really? Okay. I was more towards like 9 out of 10.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, because I think like comparing them, you can't compare them. Let's be frank. Like it's like you know, comparing a kid show to like Ozarks or something. It's very nuanced. It's clever. It's got a lot of things going for it. It's definitely ahead of its time. Like you even think of the, move at the time of having a lead white and black guy as best buds as well in the 80s, and racism is still something that it's around now, but in the 80s, I mean, I don't actually know when the time frame was here. 80s, right?
It was early 83, 84, I think was the first episode. So this would have been 83.
Right. So it's really in it. Like, so
there was disco dancing in this.
Like, yeah, and you think about God, if that is the case, I mean, even more so, it really was ahead of its time. So, and it holds out pretty well now. Like, I laughed at the dancing and I laughed at the fighting, but that aside, I didn't really. And the what was the gangster's name?
Linus.
Linus.
Or is it?
So yeah. So him. Those three bits. I was like, God, that is quite funny. But outside of that, I thought it held up really well. So as far as like a quality show, I think it just
push a 9
in the park. So I'm a 9, but I got to just add here that there's a different feel with this. So when I watched
Thunder in Paradise,
Thunder in Paradise and the A-Team, I got like it was like a heartwarming. It's like the kind of 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock family watch. You could watch it with your kids, and it's a little bit silly. And there's something so lovely and heartwarming. I didn't get that from this. And I wouldn't watch it for that. This is more of an engrossing watch that I think me and Luke could probably stick on now and just get into it and kind of enjoy it. There'll be an odd laugh, but mainly you're just going to enjoy it for the quality of the show. So it's it was several cuts above what we've seen so far. So I want to give it that. I would agree.
Yeah, I think, and this is why I like sort of us hammering it through, because I think we need to come to a unified decision. And actually, I like how you've approached that. And if you do look at it, and the thing I have to keep in mind is I'm glad we picked this episode because I was truly engrossed and invested in the outcome of this.
For sure.
And even like the one point I wanted to raise earlier, even before the assassin was killed, there was just that little bit of nuance to his character where he ran right by the wife and kid because they weren't the target. So therefore he just ignored them on the way out the door, on his way out the window. So there is actually a lot of complexity to it. I think part of my scoring, and I have to keep ignoring this, is I have seen other episodes that weren't as good or characters that were way more ridiculous. But I think we have to judge it on what we're looking at. So if you're going 9s, how about if we were to say something like 8, 7?
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. I think for me, it's just got to be above what we've seen so far from where I'm at.
Because if I was saying high 7s, you're saying low 9s. I think I want to up my sort of percentage. I think the difficulty is we're still trying to figure out what our scoring scale is. So I don't know what's a 10 and I don't know what's a 9. This was very good. And I think the fact that it is as translatable as it is to today, that is incredibly ahead of its time, early 80s wise, because there was a lot of stuff that came out after this that had the opportunity to see what Miami Vice did and didn't really take up that mantle.
It was 37 years ago, 36, 37 years ago. And like, I mean, it's just kudos to that. It's impressive.
I think if you were to compare this, I saw a show. What was it called? It was called SWAT. It's got this. I've only seen like clips of it, or actually watched it for 2 minutes ago. And this is so bad, I can't even watch it. So for me, there's Walker, Texas Ranger bad. That's so bad, but heartwarmingly bad. You know, they're just so cheesy. I love it. Whereas a TV show like SWAT, I think it's CBS or something. It's just like they're just trying to produce, this amazingly good looking actor who's tough and muscly and it's just so formulaic and boring. I can't even find it to be cheesy.
Predictable. Yeah.
Yeah. This is way better compared. Even if we forget when they were made, if I put these two shows side by side, Miami Vice and SWAT. Now, I want to throw out there, I haven't seen SWAT nor review, but I haven't been able to sit through 30 seconds of SWAT. That was made in the last year. Miami Vice was made in the early 80s. I find it to be way cooler, way more interesting, deeper, much better acting, and the production value is way better in my view. I'm not saying the quality or the money spent, but I think on that comparison, it's compelling argument to really push that score up to the high 8s.
Cool. Well, I'm happy with that.
8-7 it is. So Miami Vice is on the board with 8-7. Well, Hugo, we got to pick next week. I have an idea for next week.
Oh, I was going to ask you, what are you thinking?
I kind of like, because this is turning into introducing a British guy series to American iconic TV. And there's another one that we discussed you haven't seen. And this was my favorite show as a kid growing up. I think Dukes of Hazzard is.
Oh,
you were going to guess. Sorry.
I was going to guess, but I was going to guess Airwolf. So
no. Funny. Airwolf I watched, but Airwolf didn't tug the heartstrings. We are going to review Airwolf. There's no doubt about that. That has to be done.
Magnum PI and Knight Rider. Those are two that I'd really love to cover. I'm well up for Dukes of Hazzard. Yeah. So again, like Miami Vice, I've never seen one. I have an idea that you've got the car and the two. I think it's the two brothers. And they're up to maybe no good, but I know nothing outside of that.
Have you seen the film, by the way?
No,
the newer one with Johnny Knoxville and
no. And I know there's the scene where you've got like the kind of A-team underneath the car doing the jump thing. I think is that iconic with them?
So they're very much going to have the same. I'm just going to pick Dukes of Hazzard clip. The first thing that comes up on YouTube with it's got 377,000 views. I'm just going to use that as my taster. I don't know what it's going to be, but I just want you to get a flavor for the show. Let me just turn this one off here.
And the other thing I remember is jumping through the window.
Jumping through the window.
Is it jumping through the window or jumping into the car? Is that something that's
So in the A-team in Dukes of Hazzard, they have this iconic Dodge Charger, and I believe Dodge Chargers is really hard to come by because they tore through so many Dodge Chargers in the filming of this TV series. Because they jumped a car at least once. That car did a jump over a ravine, a river, a creek, a pickup truck that's got dirt falling off the back, anything that could be quasi ramp-esque, and they were being in hot pursuit, they would jump it. But this show for me, I watched this show not too long ago. I've been on this mission to watch these shows that I remember when I was a kid. This show is higher brow than I think I expected the second time around. I'm not going to say much more, but if you speak to anybody who's watched it like me, you think it's a real dumbass show. It is really stupid, but I'm going to save my views for next week. However, I think it's a bit more evolved than people may let on. And that may just be me.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. So anyway, it's time for us to move to the after show, mate, or the pre-show. I think we still need to define what it is. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. And next week we'll be doing the Dukes of Hazzard. If you want to suggest an episode of the Dukes of Hazzard to watch, please let us know. For the moment, I will be searching for the best reviewed episode of Dukes of Hazzard, and I cannot wait for that one. All right, Hugh, thank you again, mate. We'll catch up with you soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
See you soon.